All right, welcome back to the Justin Prince Show. I am so excited for you guys to meet one of the kind of deepest thinkers and one of the more incredible communicators that I know. Eddie Pinero has this incredible podcast where he does these 10-minute with music, but these 10-minute speeches or commentaries. And then on YouTube, he's built an incredible YouTube channel. And you're gonna want to follow Eddie. I was telling him, and I was kind of teasing him. It was one of those jokes that's like real. I was like, bro, you're like a real life Stoic, like one of the Stoic philosophers. Like it's the way he kind of processes and the way he thinks, and he's got this artistic bend. But it's these really deep thoughts. And I was showing it to my girls when we were together last night. My girls at the time of this discussion are 14 and 16, so they're kids, right? And there's these little like clips, like 10 seconds or 30 seconds, and Eddie just drops these just like life nuggets where you could just sit there and think about it for the the next like 3 weeks, and just ponder upon like, man, what did he just say? And that's really deep. So Eddie, man, what an honor to have you at my house, brother.
Justin, I appreciate it, man.
So really fired up to do this with you.
Likewise, and I'd love for you to introduce me everywhere I go for the rest of my life.
So you have to me this really interesting artistic vibe. Like you're an artist. Like when you speak, it's like listening to poetry. It's like listening to someone capture like the essence of the soul. Do you consider yourself an artist? Is that how you look at yourself?
That is, well, first of all, that means a lot, so thank you. But yeah, I mean, that's exactly the angle that I try and come from. It's like I've considered myself an artist, and it's almost like I feel like the most interesting things are kind of an intersection of two different arenas. You know what I mean? So it's like it's traditional speaking and storytelling intersecting with sort of the poetry and music and art side of things. I've always found that interesting when you kind of combine stuff. And so, yeah, it's taking a music background and the idea that human beings, as you know, are not pragmatic, they're emotional. And a lot of times to get us to act, we have to first get ourselves to feel. And so that's sort of the premise and the driver behind that.
So I'm finishing a book right now called Choose Your Enemies Wisely. It's by a guy named Patrick Bet-David. And when I say I'm finishing it, I'm actually finishing it for the second or third time. I like to study books versus just read them. And he talks about like building a business plan. And he said most people build it like with the logic of their brain. Like we need this much sales to hit this much revenue, to hit this much of a goal. Yeah. And his whole thing is to build half of it with your logic. So you still need the tactics, but then build the other half with the emotion. And the emotion of, who, in this case, who are my enemies or what fires me up or what is my mission or what is my purpose and my calling. And one thing that's interesting with you is you have both because you come from like in art, they call it like the science or the art, right? You come from a political science background, but then you also have this incredible acoustic guitar, songwriting, performing background.
Yeah.
How have you blended both the logic and the emotion, do you feel like, to make the impact you make?
Yeah, first of all, I want to read that book. I've been meaning to for a while. But the pragmatic side of things is like, it's almost like I have to. Like nothing excites me about that. And maybe that's common, but like the business acumen. It's like I like to surround myself with people that can help me there and are also great there, That's sort of the yin to my yang because I really enjoy the other piece, the sort of heart versus the brain. And I think in a way you have to, at least for me, because, it gets difficult. And if you're thinking logically, after a series of losses or after, being unsure or, not being where you want to be, like there are other options. There are plan Bs. And it's easier to take those off ramps. And for me, like loving what I'm doing and immersing myself in it and feeling like it's having an impact is what propelled me to keep adjusting and transforming and pivoting and just staying a student. Whereas like I've seen it other areas of my life where I'm half in, it's like there's not that drive.
You speak with a curiosity. Like you speak with authority. Here's how I would describe it to you. This is what I watch when I watch you. you speak with an authority that what you're saying, there is real wisdom in what you're saying. But a lot of the times, even as I watch you make a statement, I feel like you're almost asking questions. It's like you're thinking through the deeper level of it. It's like you're unpacking it as you speak.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel that way?
Yeah. So Charlie Munger said, "You are your own experiment," and that to me struck with me. And I think, that's where the beauty is. Like, no one wants to be pointed at and said, "Hey, this is how you live your life," or "This is what you do." It's like, no, you're on a journey, and there are some wins and some losses. Sometimes you get your butt kicked. Sometimes you don't. And for me, it's taking those stories and I guess repurposing them, sharing them in a bite-sized way that someone, the athlete, the single mother, the entrepreneur, it doesn't matter. You can take that and go, oh my God, that's relevant. There's always this and I believe this, you're always one decision or one idea away from a totally different life. And it doesn't have to be anything big. It's like a little perspective shift and you go, oh, I'm not as far away as I thought. Or, oh, there's a solution 3 feet away from me. Just start stepping that way. And so I love capturing those moments. And I do. I approach it like it's an experiment, not like I know, because Lord knows I don't, so that's.
Literally, as I watch you communicate, I can see you thinking the deeper, you're experimenting in the deeper meanings of it. And I want you to dig into this idea that you're one idea away, you're one moment away, one decision away. I think that's become almost cliche sometimes, where people are like, you're one decision away from changing your life.
Yeah,
everyone just rolls their eyes like, yeah, right. There's 1,000 things I have to do. That's literally what happened, I feel like, in your career trajectory.
Yeah.
Because you were in the insurance world, and now full time you're a content creator, right? With your podcast and YouTube, et cetera. So what were those decisions in there that changed the whole trajectory of your career and your life?
Some big and some small, which is what's cool. So the leaving that corporate space, which, by the way, ton of value, and I appreciated.
Did you feel like you fit in there?
No, right? Totally square peg round hole. Showing up, and I remember one of the light bulb moments was I was reprimanded for using too much color in a PowerPoint. And I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I here? And there were I felt like I had value to add, and that was sort of stifled, and so it took a lot of courage for me to leave. And you'd think, and looking back now, it's like, leave, but it was like cutting off an arm. Everything I'd worked for up until that point was being there, right? Getting good grades, going to a good school to get into a good college, doing well in college, getting a good job, getting promoted. Now you're just going to leave. Your family's going to worry about you. You're going to be the one guy out of all your friends that doesn't have it all figured out. You're going to be that. And it took months for me to do. So that was, I would say, a big decision. But then, and I almost think this is when I say that quote, more what I think of. So I've been doing YouTube now for almost 9 years. And now I'm at a point where the wheel's really turning. I have a team of 9. We're getting 250,000 views a day on one YouTube channel out of many, doing really well. But for the first 7 years, that wasn't the case. 7. And so it was writing this thing or creating this thing that in my heart, I'm like, is valuable. It's going to change the world. And you put it out there. And a lot of times it's crickets and no one cares. And I had to learn a lot of things. I had to learn, hey, it's not personal. It's not about you. The world responds to value. Adjust a little bit. Figure out how to connect, right? Keep going, keep going. But I'm human, right? And so year 3, 4, 5, I'm putting things out into the world and it's not getting a response, and it's devastating. I mean, there were times where I couldn't get out of bed. It's like, what am I doing here? How can I figure this out? And the one thing that kept me going was the next one. It's going to be the next one. It's going to be the next one. Show up for the next one. And eventually, the compounding happened and the next one, quote unquote, arrived. But it was that was my miracle. I was given a keynote last week, talking about YouTube. It's like a YouTube strategy session. And I was joking around because no one cared about the strategy. People were like, I want to know how the hell you didn't quit year 1 through 7. Right? I showed them the graph. And that's it. I mean, that's it.
Walk us through that concept that the marketplace responds to value. Like, unpack that.
Yeah. So there's an idea that like it's personal when things fail, or, you know, there's a tendency to get mad or complicate things. It's like when you put value out into the world will respond. So you need to find a way to get more valuable. It's like Jim Rohn's idea, like you build the man, right? You build the man, you build the man, you build the man, and the world responds. And so it's almost like a practice of pointing in at yourself. And I remember, I don't know if this is the original sayer of the quote, but like Will Smith would say, like, it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility. If you get in the habit of saying everything is your fault, there's just, you are giving yourself an advantage that the world does not have. Because our instinct is always to blame. It's the boss, or it's the circumstance, or it's the significant other, right? If it's you, you empower yourself because you can fix it. If it's not you, you disempower yourself because you can't fix something that's not in your control. And so that is like, yeah, when it comes to whatever you're putting out, like for me, media, it's not the audience's fault that they don't like it. It's mine, right? That's sort of the idea.
Where did that personal responsibility, where did you start learning that, like, I'm not going to blame everyone else? I was so glad this is where you took it. Because to me, I think a lot of us are like, I got something to say.
Everyone's got something to say.
Everyone needs to hear my voice, you know? And we put it out there, and to your point, we get crickets.
Yeah.
And instead of like saying, how can I improve? We say the algorithm sucks, or basically it's someone else's or something else's fault. Where was personal responsibility anchored in for you? Was it as a child? Was it in your business career? Like, where did you say, no, I'm not going to blame them. I'm going to own my own stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had incredible parents and grandparents that instilled that in me. I think as an adult, it was sort of reinforced. This is one of those moments that just sticks with you. So I went to Holy Cross, which is a liberal arts school in Massachusetts, and they have a D1 rowing program there. I didn't know anything about rowing. I'd done soccer in high school, was done with soccer, and I saw like a sign-up sheet for it, and I'm like, great way to meet buddies, be focused, you know, do something meaningful. And I remember going up there, and the sport is the most physically demanding sport I've ever done, right? So like that rowing machine, you know, those 2,000, 6,000 meter tests on that thing, I'd have 6 tests and 3 papers, and I'd be freaking out about the erg test, right? And so I remember getting on it as a freshman, and they don't cut, right? They don't make cuts. You stay or you quit. There were like 50-something or low 60 freshman walk on day 1. There were 3 of us in a Coxon senior year. So like everybody left, right?
Wow.
It's a taxing sport. And I remember getting on the thing, and you know, I'm doing my first erg test, and I'm just suffering through like everybody else. But I'd never done that before. And so I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm feeling like a hero for being on this machine. I'm thinking no one would be doing this. Look at me. And I just remember the freshman coach walking up and goes, "You're going to have to be better than that." I'm like, "What do you mean be better than that?" He walks away, comes back a little bit later in the piece. This is, "Look, I don't know what you have to do, but people at Brown are hurting and they're rowing faster right now, right? People at, you know, whatever the Ivy Georgetown, they're hurting as well, but they're figuring out a way to go faster." And that was like the light bulb moment. It's like, you can be here, you can suffer and still lose. It's like, it's showing up is not enough. Suffering is not enough. It's finding a way to win with the pieces that are around you. And that was a big thing for me. Like as an adult, I take that, you know, I always say like the most important things about being on that team, I implement way after school, you know? So that was personal responsibility. It's like, it's on you to figure it out.
This idea of you're suffering, but you're still going to lose. I mean, to me, that's that 7 years of YouTube, right? Like I'm suffering and I'm losing, but instead of quitting right there and saying, what in the world am I doing with my life? you just kept digging down and getting better and improving and adapting and adjusting and getting better.
Yeah. It's like the door was shut. and if it wasn't, I would have kicked it open. Right? If there was a plan B, I would have taken the plan B. And I think that is why, in a sense, you have to, like we were talking about earlier, love what you do. Because there's always an opportunity to do something else, right? Or like if it was about money specifically, you think year 4 or 5, I wouldn't have been like, okay, there are better ways to make money at that point, and it's just like, you have to be immersed in the mission.
We were downstairs this morning, and I was teasing Tyler. You could become tight when you're making someone eggs and toast in the morning,
Yeah.
So I was making us some breakfast, and we were talking about being an introvert, and you're kind of like, you almost feel like you're like, I'm more of an introvert, but yet you have kind of an extrovert business, right? You're putting out this content to the world,
Yeah.
How do you work with both dichotomies, where you're a keynote speaker, or you're doing retreats with levels, like you're out there changing the world, but yet in your heart you're more of a thinker and more of a quiet, sit there to yourself and think and process?
Yeah, it's kind of fun. There's a switch that I can turn on that I enjoy, but also like without the thinking, there wouldn't be speaking. I feel like it's being reflective and not like over the top, but like generally more quiet. And I like to take walks and just kind of think about the day and what's going on. And I feel like that gives me stuff to really ponder and reflect and share. I have a keynote Thursday in Mexico, and just talking to the CEO about the direction of the keynote. And he says, the reason I was so drawn to you is because your stuff is more introverted. Like a lot of, to your point, the space is high energy. And I think for a reason, like I need that a lot. I need, Gary Vee to say, get up, do better, do more. It's like, all right, I got it. But then there are times where, I do like to philosophize. I like to play Jordan Peterson and dance around chaos and order. And, it's just, so it's, I think it works well. And then the other thing too is like, you got to be who you are. It's like I could attempt to ramp it up to 11, but that's not how I work.
When you go on those walks, I want to get into your mind just for me. So I'm curious for me. Great thinking oftentimes comes from great questions. You're just asking questions and, kind of processing through and thinking through great questions. What kind of questions do you feel like you ask yourself on those walks? Like what are you thinking about, and how are you processing things?
Generally, it's my day to day. It's like I'll be upset about something, and it's sometimes interesting to go down those rabbit holes of why. Like, person A didn't call you back. That pisses me off. Why? Ego. Are you reliant on that call? Are you moving away from what matters? And like eventually you get to that point. It's like, like whatever the reason is, and then you take that and turn it into a story, right? Share that with the audience. Like, hey, this happened to me, and this is how I felt. And by the way, I'm guessing a lot of us feel this way. This is the epiphany I came to, and what I think is the value here. And here's how you can add it and make your life more meaningful, more valuable. And like, that's just my favorite thing to do, is like translate like that. And, my antennas are up, sort of looking for those things just day in and day out,
What are some of those deeper things that motivate you? So they talk about like, the concept I teach is like 7 levels of why. So it'd be like, what are you looking to accomplish? And someone says it, and it's like, why is that important? So what are you looking to accomplish? I want to be successful. Cool. Why is that important? And then you keep digging down.
Yeah.
What do you feel like are some of those deeper levels of why for you, where it really pulls out the soul and the heart and the mission and the purpose of what you're looking to do?
Yeah, well, there's an idea, like, I'm sure you've heard it, your purpose comes from your pain, right? So I look back at the last 10 years, and it's like the things that I struggle with the most, I want to share. And for me, a lot of it is, that piece around resilience. My favorite quote, I scream it from the rooftops, Nietzsche, and those who were seen dancing were thought to be insane by those who could not hear the music. You're always crazy until it's done, right? No one understands until you do. And so it's teaching people to be your biggest fan. Like, yes, criticize yourself, sure. It's not about hitting your head against the wall repeatedly, but be there for yourself. Understand it's a process. Give yourself grace. I just think that's a critical thing and something that we miss a lot.
You and Tyler have started Levels. So the first time we met was in Sedona.
Yep.
At one of your guys' men's retreats.
Yep.
And you guys had an amazing group of men, all successful in their own right? Like doing things in their business or in their families or in their communities, etc. And one thing I noticed about you, when I first met you, I hadn't met you yet, but you came up and you just gave me a big hug, I was like, what a freaking stud, But where does your passion for this Levels men's organization come from? And walk me through what that means to you. Like, what are you looking to accomplish with this?
Yeah, I think a few things. One is there was a switch that flipped in me that I realized at 26 when I left the sort of corporate space and realized like I could live my life. And I wake up every day like seeing the abundance of life and totally aware that that's a cliche, but it's monumental. Like for me, it's everything. It used to be this instruction manual that I had to follow. And now it's like, whoa, the world is this playground that we can do what we want and we can push buttons and we can immerse ourselves into it. We can see how life pushes back. And it's just this exciting, free thing. And I want other people to feel that. I want as many people as possible to be able to make that shift because I think they'd be better off. I think their family, community, and the world would be better off. So that's number one. And then the second thing is sort of the darker truth that there is, I think, a lack of resources for men to be vulnerable. I had, and so did Tyler, my business partner in Levels, people close to us pass away. And the jolting thing there, other than the obvious devastating fact that it happened, is that this was a happy person. This is someone that you'd never know, cool, calm, collected, seemed like everything was great. And it's like, no, it's not. And you can't help but ask the question, why would that conversation not have been had with me or one of their other friends? Why was that harbored, just stuffed inside? And so creating a community where men can be vulnerable and share things that they're going through. And I think most importantly, lift each other up is, it's just a very meaningful thing.
When you're at those retreats, so let's go back to the introvert part of you.
Yeah.
Let's say that there was, let's call it 15 to 20 of us. It was pretty intimate, but it wasn't one or two people, right?
Right.
Does that bring out kind of a anxiety or pressure for you, or do you feel like, no, I feel like I'm in my element in that, particularly when it just first starts?
Yeah, I think both. So it's a lot. Like I wouldn't say it's anxiety because that has more of a negative connotation. It feels like a lot. So when it ended, for example, I slept for like a day. like I had to turn myself completely off, close my calendar. But like when you're doing it, it's just like fun and exciting and meaningful. And like watching these people come in all stoic and, reserved and guarded. And then day 3, everyone's crying and hugging and sharing stories. And like, it's a roller coaster ride that you don't even realize you're in it. You're just there. But it is like, I remember dropping the last guy off at the airport and I was like, oh, what just happened? I
know that feeling so well.
It was a lot. Would you say you're an introvert?
Well, do you want to know what's interesting? So I originally thought of introvert. I don't know how you thought of it or how you processed it. Introvert, extrovert. I thought of it like this. Introvert wants to be more quiet. Extrovert wants to be more loud. Introvert wants to kind of hang out more by themselves. Extrovert wants to be with people. That's how I always thought about it. The way that understood it at a deeper level, and I don't know if you've heard this as well, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. It's more, how do you recover? So if you recover more quietly, more in solace, you'd like to read a book, maybe watch a movie, maybe just chill out, sleep, rest, whatever. That's more introvert. If you recover in crowds, like if you going to a party, when you leave, you're just like, I'm filled up and like, woo, then that's more of an extrovert. So the way that you choose to process and recover is more assigned, because you know how, like, even with you, you're saying, hey, I like to be more introspective and think, but then I can turn it on. Well, you can be totally extroverted when you need to be, but the way you recover would be more the way you would show whether you're an introvert or extrovert.
I like that. I mean, I've never heard that, but that just makes so much sense. Because anyone can turn it on, and can certainly work a room for sure. But I wouldn't recover in a crowd. I like that a lot. That's a really good way to sort of parse it.
I am passionate about speaking. Like, I love it. I watch speeches. I'll dissect them. And you write these speeches all the time, right? This is your business, right? I want to just hear that process for you. Like, what are you, where are you finding your content? Like last night we did a kids mastermind, a teenager mastermind, right?
Yeah.
We had maybe 60 some odd kids at my house. You came and spoke and did an incredible job, by the way. And these kids, you said to me after, you go, hey, I'll send you the episode, but I'm going to probably do an episode on last night. Mm-hmm. Are you just a collector of stories at all times, collectors of experience, and you're finding that experience and the lesson in it, and then that becomes your content? Or how are you curating the content, and then how are you framing the speeches?
Yeah, so we'll use last night as an example. Like, it starts less as a story and more with like an idea. So I think the event in and of itself is an idea. The fact that you go out of your way to create an environment where kids can come better themselves, and by the way, they're excited to be there, like, which is just incredible, is an idea and something that a lot of people could take value from. There was a really sweet woman who drove 2 hours to attend, made us all cookies for the sole purpose of, experiencing it, but also finding a way to tell her story so other people don't have to deal with what she went through, so she can help people. So like, that could be an incredible speech, the power there. So it's taking an idea and then going to flow state. Like, I'll find music that I think matches the theme or the idea. And generally, it's really simple. Like, break the music down into a soft beginning, a rising middle, and then a crescendo at the end. So when I'm writing the beginning, just loop that part and flow, right? As it's looping, set the stage. And then middle, you're sort of saying, okay, like pulling away the main components and building into like, here's what you can make of it now. And then loop the crescendo. And that's like the finale, like here's the nuggets, here's the juice, So I really do look at it, and I think comes from the songwriting process. Like, I look at it as a song. And it is funny. You know how sometimes you sing a song, or like you like a song, but you don't even know what the words are. It just sounds good and feels good. Yeah. I'm not saying the words don't matter, but I'm pointing to the importance of the entire package, the entire emotional feel.
The music more than the words.
Yeah, and the cadence as well. Like, are you talking like this? Or are you talking like this, and it's like, how are you kind of navigating that?
How did you learn to take your audience on that? I'm going to call it an emotional ride, right? Because there's times when you're up, times when you bring them down, you'll slow your cadence, you maybe deepen your voice. Time when you come up and your tempo and pace is higher, your voice is louder.
Yeah.
The music at this point is up. And so they go from A to B or A to Z, right? But you took them on a ride. How did you learn to do that? Is that instinctive? Is that something that you learned over time?
I think it's crazy. I've written like 900 speeches on YouTube. So I think reps for sure. I think it's like verse chorus dynamic. Like, the chorus is always bigger and more powerful than the verse. And so like taking that piece and then just the storytelling. Like it's sort of intuitive. You know, when you're a movie starting, for example, the opening scene is very calm and it's showing you exactly what's going on. It's laying out the characters, the landscape, why this matters. And then as you develop, things sort of intensify. So I think I've really simplified that process, you know?
Do you feel like it's a burden for you to be like, what's my next? In this case, you have 900, right?
Yeah, yep.
Is the next one like, oh my gosh, I've already done 900 of these. I'm out of things to share. Or are you like, no, dude, I got 900 more just oozing out of me at all times. Like it just flows out of me. Do you feel like it flows, or do you feel like it's becomes a burden to create more and to create more and to create more?
Well, the cool thing is it's like, it's life. And so there's always something happening, always something to write about. And that part never gets old. And if it does, it's an indicator, hey, go experience something, go on a hike, go do something you've never done, you know? And there are times where, like, literally I've, you know, what's his name wrote The War of Art, Pressfield, where he's like, don't wait to be inspired. Like, artists sit down and they do what they're going to do. And a lot of the times, even when you don't have anything or any ideas, you sit down and you go, okay, it's 9 a.m. Here's my time to go. Something comes, right? But there have been times where I'm drawing a blank, and I write about drawing a blank. Like, everyone can relate to, like,
So good.
you know what I'm saying? So there's always something. And so I think the idea is, like, truly being receptive towards value in mundane things. There's a lot of really powerful, impactful, and beautiful things that we just walk by, that we don't acknowledge, don't see. And if we position ourselves to do that, it's like we were talking about last night, perspective. You know, so much of life is perspective.
I feel like that's kind of a document versus create strategy. So document is you're documenting the journey. Like, I'm out of content right now, and I'm at a stupor of thought, and you just document that journey, and that is the content.
Yeah.
Versus, I got to create content. I got to create content. I got to create content. It's just, no, document the journey. Like the down you're feeling right now, the stress, document that. The up, the win, document it. The teenage mastermind I spoke at or attended, document it. Like the gal that drove home 9 hours last night,
Yeah.
document the journey. That's
Yeah.
all part of her content. Is that a fair way to summarize it in your mind? That's you're documenting a journey that you're living.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is. And, you know, subconsciously, it's like even the negatives, it's like you can be excited about them because it's like, well, this is going to be a great story.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
there is sort of a and by the way, I think that documentation process looks better or looks different for everybody. You know, if you happen to be someone who is incredibly charismatic on camera and, you know, very high energy, and take the camera out and do it, you know, a different way. Or I found the spot in terms of documentation for what I enjoy and what adds value to the world. So it's me and what I've been able to ensure adds value to people. If what you're doing doesn't add value to people and you love it, that's fine. Do it, enjoy it, but it's a hobby, not a business, right? And so I'm at a point now where it's like, I want to capture both. And so, yeah, it is, and it's fun sometimes to go back, you know, to the very first speech, Ode to Excellence, which is like, hey, you're in a tough spot, the money's drying up, but don't quit. Try this. Put your back against the wall. Go for a ride. See what happens. I guarantee you won't regret it, right? To breaking up with a girlfriend in 2017, moving to Florida, to having business partners that, you know, things didn't go the way I wanted it to go, and just all the ups and downs and conversations I've had with people and the comments under it that's like, you know, this is related to what I'm going through now. It's just fun to go back and kind of see it all.
Yeah, I also noticed you yesterday with the kids. I keep calling them kids. These kids are, let's call it 11 to 22, right? Because we have some college
Yeah,
kids
there's a
there.
big range.
And I noticed you pulling them aside, having conversations, being super sincere, looking them in the eye, like really giving them your honest, sincere, like soulful attention. Is that a skill that you built over time, which is just that, like, they really feel you versus looking around the room, like, when does this thing end, and when do we start, or when can I go do something else? Is that a skill that you developed, or is that just like your inner soul?
I just think it's cool, man. I think it's so cool that they're there. It almost chokes me up because it's like when you go back to what you would have needed back then, it's like that room is going to change their lives. And they're so eager and immersed and just sweet and there for each other. And it just, yeah, it's they're showing up for themselves. It's like, why would you not lend a hand to them, So it was cool. And it's not a cliche when I say that. Like, what you're doing there is so unreal. It's just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah, last night was special. I mean, each one of those are, but last night was super special. And as you're listening to this, the concept is this idea of what I call decades in today's teenage mastermind. So the idea is, what can we do to take what took all of us decades to figure out? Like last night you shared 7, how did you title it?
7 Things I Wish I Knew in High School.
Yeah, 7 Things I Wish I Knew in High School. And it took you decades to figure this stuff out later, right? Yeah. But we could teach it to them in days. So decades into days is kind of the way we've themed it.
Yeah.
And, I loved when you and Tyler were talking to my girls last night. And, here's a freshman in junior high school and then a junior. And I think Tyler asked him, he said, he's like, when I was your age, if my dad had been like, guys, we got to come to this thing, we'd all be like, no, Dad, we're not coming to your thing, Yeah. And he goes, when you guys get invited to this, are you kind of like, no, please, no? Or are you excited to come? Do you remember their responses? Do you remember that last night?
I don't remember what they said.
They were just like, we want to be here. Like this, like they go, we could be, on our phone, or we could be goofing around with our friends or whatever. But they're like, here, we won't remember that 10 years later.
Yes, I do remember that.
I just thought it was so powerful. Like them being around people like you 10 years from now still has impact. Yeah. Like a soulful, deep thinker, When we were at your retreat, one of the books you guys gave was Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius, for those that don't know that name, Marcus Aurelius was the fifth and last great Roman emperor. Mm. And the guy had all the power in the world, so literally could have anything he wanted. Yeah. As much food as he wanted, as much women as he wanted, as much money as he wanted. He could have anyone killed that he wanted. And yet he was kind of this, like, basically a righteous man. He's kind of a very introspective, like the power didn't corrupt him,
Yeah.
And he's one of the ones that he's one of the Stoics, right? They call him in Stoicism. And it's one of the ways I feel like I would introduce you. It's like, you're very stoic. You have a lot of stoicism. Have you studied, I know the mastermind we gave the Meditations book, right?
Yep.
But have you studied stoicism? Have you studied Marcus Aurelius? You mentioned Seneca earlier and so on. Have you studied these guys and these gals? Or where are you pulling some of these thoughts sometimes can trigger our own deep thoughts?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Where do you feel like where are you learning from?
So I wouldn't say study. I've read Meditations. I have some Seneca at home. Ryan Holiday is obviously brilliant at curating that stuff.
For sure.
So I really enjoy his books, but also like looking at leaders who utilize it. Like George Washington, for example, our first president, is like a huge student of the Stoics, and you see it in the way that he, governed and lived his life. But I think like it is truly just there's almost, I think I've heard Jordan Peterson say this, like thinking is something that you practice. It's one of those things that it's an awareness thing. And, particularly in 2024 with smartphones and apps and these things that pull us in. And by the way, I'm very guilty of that, right? When you are posting stuff and communicating, it's very hard to do that and then put the phone away, right? So it's like consistently reminding yourself that there's a world that's trying to suck you in. And that recognition that, hey, not only is it helpful, but it's imperative for you to be aware of what's going on in your life, what makes you feel good, where are you going? Where are you now? What's the gap? How do you bridge that gap, right? I mean, these are very basic questions that I'm not making fun of because I spent 26 years before I started asking. But it's like that those questions are so powerful, but you have to remind yourself to stop and think. And I think that's why walking is such a good tool, because it's a way to be consistent and step outside for 20 minutes, get some fresh air and just check in with yourself. It's a way to really, I don't know, make it a little event,
Let's go back to conclude. Let's go back to this idea that you can change your life in an instant. You're one decision away. You're one good idea away. You're one podcast listen away. You're one interaction away. You're one new relationship away. You at 26 got into this world of, let's call it personal development, or let's call it deeper thinking, or let's call it stoicism, let's call it this speech writing part of you. That didn't happen when you were 11.
Yeah.
Or right out of college or in high school. Like, you changed your life, and I mean changed like the entire trajectory, in this case, way for the better, with like these decision points. What advice would you give the person right now that's you at 26? Maybe they're not 26, right? Maybe they're 47. But they're you at 26, and they're saying, I'm looking for, I want to change. I need to change. I'm feeling the call to change. And then they have all of the things that are preventing them. What advice would you give that person?
Stop thinking, less doing. I mean, the reason I went into quote unquote personal development is simply because I created massive action in my life and was trying to sort through the chaos. Like, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I knew where I didn't want to be, so I stepped away from that. But, money was drying up. Like, I was losing relationships over it. My family was concerned. I was worried. And it's like, it forces you to think, to prompt, and to ask yourself these questions. Everything good happens through action. Even when you don't know exactly how it's going to manifest or materialize. And I think that is super important. And by the way, I learned that at 26, but the reason, you, Tyler, and I are down there talking to 11 to 22-year-olds is because it doesn't have to be at 26. Just like it took me 7 years before my YouTube channel popped. It can be 3 years, like 2 years with the right mentor, the right help. I'm not saying you don't pay your dues, but we're trying to expedite some of this stuff. And the best way to do that is massive action. It's immersing yourself into it. Like, even if you take something as arbitrary as a YouTube video, is it perfect? I'm going to send it to 8 people, get what they think. I'm going to do 20 different revisions. Nope. Put it out, emotionally detach, get feedback, and start thinking about the next one. That's how you change your life. That's how you create energy and get excited. That's how you navigate this world that's way bigger than us. Got to do.
Bro, you turn on when you talk about that. Like your physiology even turns on, your voice cadence, your voice volume. Like, you turn on in this idea of like, get into action. And as you're listening to this, if there's one piece of advice, it's to do.
Do. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you can simplify decades of people getting in their head with one word.
Yeah. Sometimes it's that simple.
Eddie, man, you are, your deep thinking is super refreshing. And I think one of the reasons why is because no one thinks. Very few people think. They don't take the time to think. They're very reactive. But your deep thinking is also really powerful. It's like when you listen to Jordan Peterson, it's interesting because he's deeply thinking about it.
Yeah.
And even as I watch you teach, I can watch you thinking about the deeper levels of even what you're saying and how you're applying it and so on. And I think it's just an incredible lesson that you live in real time without ever having to say it to everybody. Like, instead of telling everyone, go think, more deeply about your life. Who do you want to be? What do you want in your life? What do you want this life? You get so short. What do you want? You're just living it. You're like a living testimony of what deep thinking and the value of it, and going out there and adding value and serving people.
That means the world, man.
Man,
thank you.
Honored to have you in my home. Honored to be here with you. And, I just really admire the person you are and the value that you're adding in the world. It's really inspiring to watch. I'm grateful that I can refer you to my friends that you met last night, or I can refer you to my kids and say, this is someone that you want to listen to and learn from.
Hey, it's very mutual, man. Honored to be here. Thank you.
You're a stud. Thanks, guys. We will see you on the next episode.